That's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the engine good.
Yeah.
It far exceeds my Honda. Yeah. It just goes and goes and goes.
Oh, that's very nice.
Right, so QJ Motors, who are they? Where do they come from? So they've been in existence since the 80s, late 80s. And they're now part of this larger group of manufacturers, including Lotus, Volvo, and people like that. Again, we see this connection with European manufacturers that gives credibility to some of these other companies. But they are part of, they own Morbidelli. Although I was told that there is some issue with the Morbidelli stuff, is that the Italians are sort of revolting against the Chinese using the name and all the rest of it. It's quite interesting, and I can understand that. I can understand that very, very well. But yes, they've been in existence for a long time, and they make several bikes for different rebadged bikes for different companies or different retailers, if you like. The Macbor brand is another one. That's a Spanish company, and they're using the QJ motors. But I don't see these engines in anything else other than anything badge QJ, Morbidelli, and the Macbor at the moment. I think there was something with Benelli, but I'm not entirely sure about that. But yeah, QJ is not a new company. As with most of these Chinese companies, they've been around quite a long time, but they weren't manufacturing stuff like this. You know, they might be manufacturing garden machinery and agricultural machinery and all that sort of stuff. And this is where they stepped up and thought, well, there's a huge market here. Let's get involved in it. And that's what they've done. And of course, it's important to companies like Brembo and the tyre manufacturers and all the rest of it, because it brings business to these European companies as well. So they're not going to reject it. They're going to embrace it, because you've now got millions of motorbikes coming out of China which are all using European components. So it's a bit of a win-win, isn't it, for everybody really at the end of the day, and for the consumer. So it is going to be a bit of a comparison, because I've done about 5,000 miles on this bike in the last very few weeks away. So I know this bike intimately now when I sit on it. And I wanted to see what the Chinese equivalent really is like. This is a 600, but it's not really a 600, is it? The Chinese are in this interesting way of putting putting a higher capacity when it's not that size at all, but that's by the by. But it's the same class as this. So what do you get on this bike that you don't get on something as standard as this? Well, you've got adjustable suspension, that's for sure. And when we're talking about a bike which UK price wise, you're probably just tipping the scales at about 5,000 or £5,500, with full luggage. Remembering that you get full luggage with this, you get the side aluminium top and side panniers on this. We've got adjustable front suspension. You've got some adjustment on the back for preload, but I've got damping and preload on here. People get excited about this, but we've got the tubeless spoked rims on here. This comes with Metzler's on, Metzler Torrents. So a good tyre. I'm going to come on to that again in a minute though. A beautiful dash. You've got engine bars, you've got hand guards, and these are good hand guards. They're metal, they're not like I've got here, which are already cracking. You get a lot of kit on here. You get the connectivity with the dash. You've got, I don't believe this, quite believe this. You've got a heated seat and heated grips. So you know that you're you're getting a lot for your money. I'll just start it so you can hear it, because it does have a great sound. That's a good sounding bike, that, you know. That's a really good sounding bike. Cool. The seat's pretty comfy as well. I quite like the seat. Let me show you the seating position. You know, that's okay. That's okay. I'm very flat-footed. I would say it's very similar to the Honda in that respect. Right. So we've had a good look round. Let's get them out on the road. I'm going to take the 600. It's quite noisy here today. I think a bit of cutting grass. 600 out first. Francois's going to have the other 700 with me, and then we're going to swap them around and then come back. So not a long ride, but one to get a good idea what the bikes are really like. I like that first impression thing, which is really important. Come on, let's go for a ride. Right, so here we go then, out on the thing. So I'm following Francois, and this should be quite good fun. So I'm on the 600. Wow, this is such a light clutch. I better put my lid down. Such a light clutch. It's quite interesting. Lovely dashboard. Right, let's get carried away. It's amazing. It's so much more. It's a very different position to the Honda. But immediate impressions is going to take a little while to get used to. Quite a snatchy sort of clutch, I suppose. So Francois on the 700, this is the 600, and I think this is very much, you know, of the breed at the end of the day. You know, it's you know, you've got all the whistles and bells, you've got rider modes. I will also say that it comes with all the luggage, which is pretty impressive, really, for the money. And we're all running in that sort of sweet spot, aren't we, of, you know, 5,500, 6,000 euros. It's kicking off at a nice pace. So what's it? I mean, the engine, I've got to say immediately that the engine is actually very responsive. It doesn't feel that dissimilar to the Honda in that respect. And I tell you what, it does feel like. It feels a bit like the NX, like that. I've got quite a nice frontal area, and this is the thing I was saying about when you look at motorbikes, you know, particularly adventure bikes, you want to see some of your bike, don't you, at the end of the day? And that's sort of what you're getting with this. You're getting that sort of nice feel that you've actually got some bike. He likes a bit of pace, does Francois? He likes a bit of pace. I've never ridden this bike, so I don't know what the tyres are like or anything. But my first initial impressions are that it's actually very good. Yeah, it's got quite a sort of snatchy sort of initial getaway. I know there's a lot of talk with these bikes, particularly Chinese bikes, with the throttle response can be a little bit twitchy. but I'm only really getting that on pull away, so I think that's more clutch than engine. But it's like anything, isn't it? You get used to it. Quite interesting. You've got the seating position. You've got this riser on the back, which is actually quite nice. I've got used to this idea of having backrests. Suspension wise, so we've got these, as you do in France, you get these interesting sort of speed humps. And it's covering those really nicely. I'm not getting any sort of lumpiness, or doesn't feel like it's out of control at all. We'll have a more detailed look round, well, which we've had a look aboard. I've got to work out how we do, because I've come straight onto this and actually riding the bike. Yeah, I mean that engine is pretty responsive, you know. Wow, it's got some go. Whoa, it's got some go. I'll tell you what, that's got more poke than my Honda. Either that or it's still a bit. It's the same power output as my Honda, which is interesting. Let's make sure that we don't slip off, Paul, where it gets a little bit wet. Wow, that engine's got some poke, I tell you. Wow. Goes through the gears ever so nice. Goes through the gears really nice. Nice road. I wasn't sure where we were going to go, but I'm hoping that the 360 camera's keeping up with this. But this, you know, this would be a lovely commuter. Really lovely commuter. It's interesting that the bars are quite slight angled out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of not quite cow horny, but a little bit over, so I might adjust those. But I don't even think I've got into top. It's got a nice I'm gonna see how this is gonna work. It's having a bit of a it's got plenty of go. Plenty of go. Obviously we're in kilometres here, not in miles an hour. Just look at those brakes. Brakes are really good. Plenty of feel in the brakes, they're not snatchy. Ultra light clutch though. How do they make clutches so light? Catches you out a little bit because you don't realise there's anything there. Now he's moving. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. You must sound quite surprised. For a 600cc bike, parallel twin, same sort of setup, but really as the Honda at the end of the day. You know, I'm not a lightweight by any stretch, am I? You've got to say that it's going to give you, it's giving you an awful lot back. Not vibey at all, the engine. A little bit of vibration. You're going to get it from any twin, aren't you, really? But this bike's got nearly 400 kilometers on it. Road's a little bit greasy out here. So we're getting out to 100 kilometers an hour. Do you know what? That's really, really good. Do I have to change my my view on China? Is it going to change my view on Chinese bikes? And I think it will, you know, at the end of the day. I'm going to be very intrigued to see what the 700's like. It's quite interesting that what they do, the Chinese, they seem to be doing, which is quite odd. They're not anywhere near the capacity that they say. So we'll go through those figures, but yeah, it's quite interesting. But it's nice. It's nice for the money with the full luggage. You've got to respect that. But I do love this dash. I hope you can see that dash. I'll show you that a bit more detail, or you would have seen it in more detail. But I like the white. The white with the black numbering, that's really good. And you've got different settings here, so you can change the what you have. You've got these funny little sort of red accents here. I'm not that fussed by those really. Good, looks like we're going to a little stop. We're going to have a looks like we've got a little bit of rain coming. That's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the engine good.
Yeah.
Oh, it far exceeds my Honda. Yeah, it just goes and goes and goes. Oh yeah, wow. God, that's ultra light. This is, wow. Isn't that heavy? Blimey. Okay. Goodness me. The difference in the two. Crikey. That 600 was ultra light. This is this is a different kettle of fish. Let me put my visor down. That 600 had no weight to it whatsoever, and it was really chuckable and flickable. This is like getting onto a really big bike. Same dash, relatively similar position on the bike. You've got that little thing at the back seat again, which is quite pleasant. But wow, was it heavy coming off the stand? Goodness me. Do you know what, I've got to say, immediately, that 600 is I'm going to have to say, it's a much nicer bike. The 600 just has all the qualities you want, because you'll start it, if you're going to do an adventure, you know, similar to what I've just done, you want to start light, because you've got all that advantage. But when you're starting off heavy already, you know, you're already on a loser to start with. You know, if you've got a bike that's sort of 200 odd kilo, well over 200 kilos, you know, you're just loading up and just making life hard for yourself. Whereas that 600 didn't seem to have. This is not as chuckable. I know Frost was chucking it around like anything, but he's used to these bikes. I'm not. This is a bike where you're going to be, you know, you've got to plan ahead with this. One thing I will say, similar to both bikes, but this in particular, the gear shift isn't positive. It goes into gear lovely, but you can't feel the gear lever. Now I've got my favourite ride iron boots on, as you know, which I love these boots, and you get a lot of feeling through the foot. This unpositive the gear shift. It's okay on the down, but it's the up which is a little bit problematic for me. God, these clutches are so light. Nice thing on both bikes, so you get the grips are backlit on both bikes. Why do we not do that at home? Why do we not backlight our grips? Do we see that as quite expensive? Because it's not, is it? At the end of the day, the things you get, and they're not expensive. So we're chugging on. We're in fourth, 60 kilometers an hour, and it's hunting a little bit of fueling or throttle response, whatever it is. It's just that only a little bit. It's not bad. It's just it gives you that thing. Let's put it into fifth. See if that makes a difference. Yeah, I'm still getting it. I don't know. I just think some of these bikes have that slight. It seems to be a common theme, doesn't it? Throttle response and stuff on some of these Chinese, but I'm not quite sure why they struggle with that. Interesting, isn't it? I'm not quite sure why that happens. You know, normally what happens is they do a remap of something, and it's not sloppy throttle either. I know you can put space and things in these throttles, and it's not a sloppy throttle. But there is a certain amount of it's not annoying, it's just there, and it's not something I don't think particularly bothered me, but I think people should know it seems like a common Chinese bike trait, doesn't it, this sort of funny throttle response. Where are we going now? So I'll give you my thoughts. You know, I know it's only been a fairly short ride, but I'll give you my thoughts on both these bikes. If it was my money and I was going into this eyes wide open, you know, I was going to do a tour similar to what I've already done. Now I can't be sure what the reliability and the durability of the components of the bike's going to be. I just can't do that. But if it was me, I'd have the 600 all day long. I know that you've got centre stands on both these bikes. I know you're going to have the aluminium panniers and all the rest of it, but that 600, it's got more than enough power, and the engine gives and gives, which to me just makes a lot of sense. And I think you could really set that up nicely with all your bits and pieces that you want. You know, we've got Brembo brakes on this bike. It's interesting, isn't it, when we talk about this stuff? And I've mentioned this before in videos, is that the Chinese they understand the concept of putting well-known brands onto their bikes because it gives them some credibility. I'm not saying that it makes, it's a cheat in any way, but it's a slight psychological thing, isn't it? We think, well, I've got Brembos on here, and they're big Brembos as well. And you remember I took the BSA Scrambler out I had a look around the BSA, couldn't take it out, and that has a very small Brembos. These are big. These are whoppers. Twin pistons on here. Putting those on, getting your Metzler tyres. It's a brand that you understand, and because of that, you have some confidence in it. You think you're actually buying a really good product, which you are at the end of the day. You really are. And that's very common with a lot of these Chinese bikes. that you are seeing big brand names on them, which gives you some sort of confidence. You've also got centre stand. It's another thing that people want. They want things. They want the ease of usability. Is that a right word? Ease usability. Having things like centre stands where you can do maintenance and that sort of stuff. The only thing I think that these bikes fall down a little bit, and this is another stuff that needs a bit more detail, is the servicing intervals. You know, you've got quite short intervals on a lot of the, and I'm going to talk about Chinese bikes in general because what I'm doing here is that you tend to find you might have a 3,000 mile service interval. Now, let's put that into context with doing an adventure. Now, we did a trip on this bike. You know, it's way out of warranty these days, isn't it? But we did a trip on this bike, about 5,000 miles. If I'd have serviced that, which it was, the day I left or before I left, I would still have another 3,000 miles before it would need an oil change or service. That's quite interesting. I need another 3,000 miles I could have done on that. So I could have gone a long way south and a long way back. On a bike like this, and you tend to find with the Chinese bikes, if you're taking a new bike that's in warranty, I'd have had to have done 2 services before I even got back to here. You know, back to Perigon Brantom. I'm looking at 2 services, which is a bit of a pain, isn't it? You know, and if you've got to keep your warranty going, you're going to need a main dealer, in theory, to do your service, because if you don't, it's going to go out of warranty. And I think this is an interesting point, isn't it? It's almost a little bit like the what you find with printers, isn't it? You know, you can buy a printer cheap, but you got to pay a lot of money for the cartridges, or you got to, you know, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Or, you know, you get your phone contract. Oh, that's cheap. You've got the phone contract. Yeah, but you have to keep paying monthly. It's that they'll get you one way or another. You know, on a bike like this, you know, you might have to service it very often, but when you come to service it, it's quite expensive if you go main dealer. So it's getting you either way. But I think I don't mind. You know, there's nothing wrong with having to service your bike. If you service your bike regularly, it will last forever. And that's the thing. But on an adventure type scale, if you're really looking at, I'm going to buy a new bike and I'm going to take it on an adventure, I know I can buy one of those Chinese bikes because they've got all the bits, fantastic, and you know, it will last me my trip, no problem at all, and it hasn't cost me much. Yeah, but you might end up going out of warranty because the distance that you're travelling, you won't be able to get it serviced. Now, you should be able to get it serviced coming through France and probably Spain, because these bikes are available in these countries. But once you get outside of that, you're in problems. So you either need somewhere where you can get good service backup, or one where you don't need to service it every 25 minutes. And I think that's something that's really, you really need to think about. What's the way around that? In my view, it's, if you're not paying so much for the bike, then learn to service it yourself. You know, I know that it sounds a bit stupid, it's defeating the object of having a warranty, but I suppose it depends what you're doing. You know, if you're throwing it through sand dunes and ripping your clutch out and all the rest of it, you know, it's probably not going to be covered by a warranty anyway. But it's that thing, isn't it, of it also comes into this argument what I spoke about before, the episode prior to this, about think about second hand. When you're looking at bikes, just think about second hand. We haven't got many of these bikes in the market yet second hand. You know, you might start getting some of the CF Motos and stuff like that, but not a lot yet, and they will still be in warranty, won't they? The proof in the pudding will be once some of these bikes get a little 2 or 3 years old, when they're out of warranty, where they might be really real bargains. Again, probably with very low mileage on, because you know what we like, we swap our bikes like we do our underpants. So, you know, you'll be able to buy some of these bikes with very low mileage. They'll be out of warranty. You can service it yourself, as long as you can get the parts. But I do think they are a bit of a bargain. I do think they're a bit of a bargain. Right. So what's my conclusion out of today's little jolly? Well, in the first, I think on riding alone, I think this 600 is the best bike out of the two. The 700 really, you think it's only another 100cc, sort of. And you think, well, it can't be that much different, but wow, was there a weight difference? Good God. You know, I'm not even going to quote the actual weight figures, but I'll put them up on the screen. But it's the actual physical feel, isn't it, that's important? Not, you know, you could have another 100 kilos on that bike, but if the weight's all down low, you won't notice it. But as soon as we swapped over, and I got on that bike and took it off the side stand, it was like, whoa, it was actually quite hard to get off the side stand. Yeah, I don't know whether it was just because it was such a shock, I'm not really sure. But this engine in here, the power delivery, the amount of go that it had, the torque was phenomenal. And it's supposed to be the same as this. You know, we're both talking 47 horsepower, but I think you can, this can be de-restricted because in this country you've got the, similar to we are A1, A2 license stuff, you know, and I think it puts another 10 horsepower on. So, but we were in 47 horsepower this time, but wow, it was so, it's just so progressive. The actual throttle response was fantastic. And the way that it went into corners and the confidence that it gave you, you know, we're not on road tyres here. You know, we're sort of semi off-road, I would say, sort of slightly aggressive, a bit like the Anarchies and those sort of tyres, even more aggressive than my tyres. It was incredibly confidence-inspiring. You could slow it down into the corner very well. Again, because that reduced weight, the brakes were more efficient. If I have any criticism, though, as I said on the ride, it's the clutch is ultralight. You would get, like anything, if this is the only bike you've ever ridden, you wouldn't know any different. And the gear shift on this one was okay. The 700 had no feel to it at all. I couldn't feel the lever moving. It was so light. Which you might think, well, that's good, isn't it? But I want to know that my gear, I want to feel that. It feels a little bit toy-like, and you think, am I doing anything in there? What's going on in that box? Even though every gear went into gear perfectly, you just didn't feel that you had actually changed gear. I was thinking about this on the way over here today, this thing about, you know, we, as bikers, we like to bling up our bikes to how we like them, as you can see. And I think when you get a motorbike which sold to you for a very good price and it's already got all the bling on it, you feel a little bit lost. You think, well, what do I do with it now? And you lose that potential to do that, and that nice perk, isn't it, of getting a fairly basic bike and being able to spec it up how you want it. When it's already there, you think, well, I want to do something on it to personalise it, and we struggle with that a little bit, I think. Quite an odd psychological problem, isn't it? It's a good psychological problem, but it's an odd one. So have I changed my mind? Not that I had some preconceived ideas about Chinese bikes, and I thought I'd get on this and it'd feel quite cheap and nasty. But it doesn't. The quality feels right. Physically, it feels good. It doesn't feel cheap. It feels like it's pretty well put together. Looking around the bike, it just as those fixtures and fittings and nuts and bolts. Do I think if I really dug deep into this bike I would find some issues? Possibly, I don't know. There was a thing that I was thinking about with these bikes, and about, you know, every nut and bolt on this bike has been fitted with a certain amount of care and attention because of the way that the Japanese are, that there's a non-honor in it, but there's a pride in assembling this bike for someone to use for many years, whereas this bike has been put together on an assembly line just as a product. It's hard to explain, do you know what I mean? This has got some care with it. This is just stuck together out like a toy and then thrown out there. It's the same process. That's probably being disingenuous and it's completely wrong, but you have that sort of feeling that this has been put together with a little bit of love. This has been put together with to earn your money at the end of the day. I don't know what you feel about that. It's quite an odd concept, isn't it? But yeah. But I think, on balance, I think the march of the Chinese manufacturers is here to stay. You know, it's not something that's going away, and I think we have to accept it. And as time goes on, the manufacturing processes are so good now. You know, it's difficult to make something badly. You can put it together badly, but your actual, you know, the mechanics of everything, you know, the design is so good, and the machinery that pumps this stuff out is incredibly good, and the lifespan is very good. The only weakness is going to be how it's put together. You know, do we think that the Chinese will have this Friday afternoon bike, which we have so often with we think about Italian bikes, don't we? There's just Friday afternoon bike. Will we have that sort of scenario? I don't think we will, really. I really don't think we will. But yeah, so that's it. I'll leave it there before I bore you senseless. But I will say I was incredibly impressed with this bike. And that engine in particular I thought was a fantastic engine. And it would only get better once it's run in, which is rather frightening, isn't it, really? These guys need to step up. They really do need to step up. They might need to step down in their price, but I think they need to step up with what comes with the bikes, because that's what people want. They want accessories on their bikes. They don't want to have to pay for the nose for it. But there you go. Right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everyone. Right, big thanks to the guys at Challenge 24 here in Perigeux. If you're in the area, come and see them, because they've got all the QJ motors here, and some lovely Kawasaki's.